Is Danny Ainge overrated?
Yeah. He's overrated.
Wow, that was
He's
quick.
just, yeah, he hasn't done some good moves, and come on now, Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas didn't have to go. I know we're talking 2016, 2017, but Isaiah Thomas was doing really well, and then Danny just let him go. So, yeah.
So, Boston Celtics currently climb their way back up to 500. Um, but it's been disappointing for the Boston Celtics, very much like the Toronto Raptors. It's been a disappointing season, and it's a tough season for everyone. Obviously, with the COVID protocols and injuries and stuff like that. Um, but especially with their recent trade deadline thing, uh, it seems like the Boston Celtics have missed out on a few good opportunities over the past couple of years that could have built up to this moment, and maybe they could have been a championship contender by now. And
Yeah.
I think they let a lot of what's happening is they are letting a lot of players go during free agency, so they're losing a
Mhm.
lot of value without retaining any. Right. So Al Horford let go, Kyrie Irving they
Yeah.
let go, Gordon Hayward recently let go for nothing, even though they could have bounced on that Miles Turner trade, which would have really helped this year. And the trade
Yeah, for
deadline,
sure.
yeah, they got Evan Fournier for like 2 cents and a nickel. But they had to get rid of Daniel Tice to stay under the cap. And that's a huge. They don't have a reliable center anymore. Tristan Thompson's not the dude I thought he would be.
Yeah.
And Williams has been solid, but we'll have to see more from him, right?
Yeah, he's picking it up right now, but we still have to wait.
Yeah. So let's look back at how the Boston Celtics have sort of dug this hole. They back in 2017 or 2018, they had the bunch of Brooklyn picks that they had, right? We all know about that huge trade to Brooklyn. With all those picks, they have a bunch of Memphis picks, which didn't work out, I guess, the way they wanted it to, because Memphis actually was decent and ended up getting the 14th pick. I think that was the Aaron Nesmith pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you see how Boston has sort of dug themselves this hole when they could have used these assets and really built on their roster a few years ago?
Yeah, well, as you said earlier, they just let go of some key players, in my opinion. You had Al Horford a while ago, Kyrie Irving, and Gordon Hayward. And Gordon Hayward is having a great season. It's just, this is like disappointing to say, but we always picture the Celtics, especially like nowadays, to be like a solidified organization. I don't think they're solidified yet. It feels like they're still doing moves and moves to keep in contention with 1 and 3. But right now they're the seventh seed and they're 25 and 25. So I don't really like what's happening in the front office right now. And if there were to be a move right now, I think they would have to move Kemba Walker. But letting go of the key players that were there 2 and a year ago, that's what dug the hole for them. And I just think that they will bounce back, but this offseason has to be major for them.
Is Danny Ainge overrated?
Yeah. He's overrated.
Wow, that was
He's
quick.
just, yeah, he hasn't done some good moves, and come on now, Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas didn't have to go. I know we're talking 2016, 2017, but Isaiah Thomas was doing really well, and then Danny just let him go. So, yeah,
Right, but yeah. Well, the issue with that is they let him go with Kyrie. I have no problem with letting him go with Kyrie, right?
with Kyrie, yeah,
Um,
that's true.
for Kyrie, and then he had the hip issue, and then he never played the same. So it's fine, right? I think maybe they would have won that trade there. The only issue is they let Kyrie go for nothing, so they traded away. I think the pick ended up being Colin Sexton, that Brooklyn pick. Either Colin Sexton or Garland. I can't remember, but the point is that they potentially could have moved Kyrie, and frankly, not a lot of people would have moved for Kyrie because there was a bunch of stuff about him in Boston, whether he's a good leader, whether his health would be an issue, and stuff like that. But speaking of like big moves, remember the Anthony Davis thing 2 years ago?
Yeah.
2 years ago. Yeah. So Boston was, and frankly, Anthony Davis and his agent Rich Paul was like, hey, yeah, he's not staying if you trade for him from Boston, right? And you'll have to give us either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, as well as Marcus Smart, some picks, those Memphis picks. Could you foresee a sort of, if they went through with that trade, could you foresee a sort of like Kawhi-like entrance in Boston, where the guy you're bringing in, he doesn't really want to be there. He's probably just a 1-year rental. He has some injury concerns, but he fills a big hole in your lineup where you have a real big man, not some small dude like Al Horford. Frank, I love Al Horford, by the way. But you have a really impactful center or power forward at your position. Do you think that could have been an opportunity, or do you think it would have just been a 1-year rental? They would have wasted a lot of assets, because that's probably what Danny Ainge was juggling with at the time.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, just acquiring or having the opportunity to acquire a top 15 player, like that's gonna, like the front office, of course, they're gonna take every offer and listen to every offer. But in my opinion, I think that would have just been a 1-year rental because, yeah, Anthony Davis would have gone to Celtics, but you're trading away key players, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart. So I just think that Anthony Davis would have been a rental and he would have gone the year after. And I don't think he would have a Kawhi type of. He would have a Kawhi entrance, but he wouldn't have as much as a successful season as Kawhi did with the Toronto Raptors, because the Celtics would have already put them, like, themselves in a pit hole. And if that trade actually did go through, like, I would not watch the Celtics games ever again, because that may have just been the dumbest trade. If they traded key players like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So overall, I don't think it would have done too much.
Right.
Just a
but
rental.
yeah, but that's the thing about Danny Ainge. I feel like he's afraid to take the risk, right?
Yeah.
He was afraid to give up too many assets for Miles Turner, and look where they ended up. He was afraid of giving too many assets of Anthony Davis, and frankly, that it probably wouldn't have worked out anyways. But still, and that's my concern with like a GM like Sam Presti right now. Now, Sam Presti, we know he's great, right? He's great. But that's my issue with accumulating so many picks and so many like intangible assets that you might overvalue some of them, right? We all knew Danny Ainge liked his picks, but I think he overvalued them. If you're trading for a big star, if you're looking to move for a big star that will help you push into that level of contender, you need to be able to give up some of those picks and give up a little bit extra. I mean, there's a saying, you don't trade 4 quarters for $1, right? And that's the issue with like the James Harden trade that we just saw. They traded not even 4 quarters, like 2.5 quarters for James Harden.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to be willing to give a little bit more for those superstar players that will help you get to where you want to be. And I think that's where Boston Celtics have made a lot of mistakes over the time. They've been trying to groom their players, but sooner or later they're going to get locked up in cap and huge salaries between Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and it's going to be tough to add more value to that team.